Hey pals, how you doing? So it is Suicide Prevention Month, and I wasn't really, I wasn't writing the poem with that in mind. I was more writing it to kind of process things. But I wrote a poem, and I want to read it. I want to read it out loud because I feel like it has more power that way, coming from my mouth instead of just you reading it on your own. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I loosely titled it, Dying, Being Saved. It's, content warning, it's me talking about, my last suicide attempt, and how it felt to be dying, and then how it felt to be saved. So I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna be looking at my phone a lot, because it's a long poem, and I definitely don't have it memorized. I wrote it yesterday, in one sitting. Didn't really edit it or anything. So if it's rough, that's why, but I feel like it's worth being shared. Dying. Being saved. I've attempted to kill myself 4 times in my life, and I only came close to dying on my last attempt. So now I can say I know what dying feels like. And I can also say I know what being saved feels like. Neither are very comfortable in the moment. Truth be told, I never really wanted to die. Because of all the therapy I was getting, I was able to recognize that I just wanted to escape. Escape the circumstances I was living in that brought me such terrible feelings of depression and stagnation and hopelessness. But just because I was able to recognize that truth doesn't mean it was very easy to remember it in my darkest moments. And when I was in a hospital recovering from attempt, it felt like everyone cared about me. Finally. It wasn't true, but it felt like it. When I was dying during my last attempt, May 2016, if you're curious, I just lost all control. I took the pills and immediately drove myself to the hospital, which I guess backs up the whole not wanting to die line. By the time I got to the hospital, I was losing control over my limbs, and I was slurring my speech. By the time I parked, I could not walk, so I just sat in my car and cried. And my mom told me to put on my emergency blinkers, so a security guard could come see me and help me. Luckily, I eventually figured out which button was the one I needed, and my emergency blinkers were on, and soon a security guard arrived. My speech was unintelligible, but my mom was still on the phone. I handed my phone to him, and he talked to my mom. And then there were 3 nurses with a wheelchair walking to my car, and I couldn't stand. And I was so fucking scared that I might have actually fucked up. I was scared that I might not survive this time. But then I was in the emergency room, being saved. I only remember flashes. The light was very bright. Someone, a security guard I think, was holding my hand, as they tried to put a tube down my throat via my nose, as they kept saying, "Don't gag," as if that was possible, and I was crying. And eventually the tube was in place, and they pumped charcoal into my stomach, and I was crying because I didn't want to die, and someone was holding my hand, reminding me that people care. Even people I don't know care. And I fell asleep in that bright room. But this was a sleep that I would wake up from. So I fell asleep, and I was grateful. Recovery, though, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, people come out of the woodworks to tell you they care. But they say they've always cared. And that doesn't line up with the history, with how they've always acted. So that's confusing. On the other hand, the people you already knew cared. The people you knew you would hurt if you killed yourself. But you erroneously decided would be better off without you and your pain. those people come around too. And they reminded me that they loved me. And they told me that I was wrong. They wouldn't be better off without me, and neither would the world. And I felt loved again. But they can't remind me of those truths forever, so I kept going to therapy, both individual and group, and I kept seeing my psychiatrist in order to have my meds adjusted, with the hopes that one day they would be right. I've attempted to kill myself 4 times, but I've done my best to survive all my life. And I was lucky enough that after a lot of work, a lot of late night depressive spirals, a lot of psych hospitalizations and shitty food, a lot of group therapy and individual therapy, and a lot of adjustments to my medications. After all of that, I was finally able to be okay again. Now, don't get me wrong, surviving is still hard work sometimes, but it never seems to get as hard as it was in May 2016. Not anymore. And for that, I am grateful.